It is way too expensive to be poor, and I'll tell you why. Having grown up in, I would say, less than desirable means, I was poor growing up. And there were a lot of differences I saw between prices in poorer neighborhoods as opposed to prices in neighborhoods that were better established. You know, my mom would drive way to the suburbs to go buy goods because you would buy them at a better price. Well, today you can buy goods that you need at better prices if you buy into memberships. But oftentimes people with less money don't buy memberships because they deem those memberships to be, well, too expensive for them. They don't see the value in it because they don't really add it up. They look at a Costco membership, oh my God, it's $60 a year. $60 a year really isn't that bad when you look at the savings. So let's take toilet paper, for example. Okay, so the toilet paper, if you buy at, say, your local gas station or grocery store, you're going to pay somewhere around $1 per roll. But if you buy your toilet paper in bulk at, say, Costco or BJ's or Sam's Club, you're going to pay anywhere between 55 cents to 70 cents per roll. And to some people that may seem like a small savings, but think about it. You use toilet paper 365 days a year. That is a huge savings. So there's other savings that I found that with juice, I save a lot. I don't buy my juice typically at the regular grocery store, even when they have it on sale, because I look at the price per unit. That's something that most of us don't look at, price per unit. So if you're paying 34 cents price per unit at the grocery store, but over at Costco, you're paying 24 cents price per unit. When you add up all these things that you're purchasing at the grocery store, as opposed to purchasing them at a warehouse at a discount, over time, that $55 or $60 that you're going to spend on that membership, you're going to earn it back and much more. So number 2, reason why it's too expensive to be poor, banking fees. Banking fees are a real problem for people who have had a bank account and say, for instance, they have some overdraft fees at the bank. A lot of times people with lower income do not like banking at banks. And the reason being is they oftentimes owe the bank fees. Most oftentimes it's the overdraft fees. Now we all know what overdraft fees are, right? So when you try to pay a bill and you don't have enough money in your account, so the bank charges you a fee to go ahead and release and pay that bill. In some cases they'll do that, and then they'll force you to pay the money back at some later time with a fee, okay? Other times the bank will totally deny paying that bill, and so the bill gets kicked back, and so now you owe a fee for, say, a check that didn't cash. You'll owe a return check fee, right? So oftentimes there are some people that avoid banks because they feel like the bank is the enemy, when the real enemy is poverty. So you choose not to deal with banks, but then you'll go to Western Union or you'll go to a Walmart or a Kroger and you'll buy your money orders and you'll pay several dollars for a money order. Or you'll pay several dollars at a check cashing facility just to cash your check. Well, how is that any different? It's just a different form of banking fees. Except sometimes they're more expensive than the actual bank. Also, people with lower income, they oftentimes go to payday loan establishments to acquire a payday loan, not looking at the astronomical interest that they're going to pay. I mean, I've heard as high as 25 or 30%. That's ridiculous. You, the people who can least afford it, is being robbed the most. High fees and high interest rates, it robs you of the ability to even begin to save. And if you can't save, how do you build wealth? because you can't build wealth without making investments. First, there's the savings, then there's the investments. But let's back up. How can you save? How can you invest if you first don't earn? You have to increase your earnings if you want a better life. So let's now talk about number 3. Oftentimes, people of low income have bad credit. Now, why is that? It's a domino effect. If you don't earn enough money to pay your bills, you're often late paying your bills, which then it gets reported to the credit bureaus that you're late. Then the credit bureaus decrease your credit score. And because you have a lower credit score, when you get ready to apply for, say, a mortgage or a car loan or any other type of loan, your interest rate skyrockets. Again, the people who can least afford it pays the most. Number 4, people of lower income oftentimes choose to rent because either they can't afford to buy a home or they've been led to believe that they can't afford to buy a home. Well, the thing is this, if you're paying rent, you are paying your landlord's mortgage, taxes, homeowner's insurance, and you're putting a profit in their pocket. So how is it that you can't afford a home? Well, maybe the interest rate is too high because why? You didn't pay some bills on time, so now your credit is bad, and so your interest rate goes up. Also, for those of you renting, oftentimes you find yourself in a situation where the home that you're living in, maybe your landlord hasn't exactly kept that home up to code, or in some cases, maybe it's a drafty home. So now you're living in a less than energy efficient home, which means now your utility bills, like your gas bill or your water bill because you have leaky faucets, are now increasing. So you're paying more in utilities for inefficiency. Number 5, another reason why it's too expensive to be poor, and this is something that as a child I experienced. Living in a poorer area of Detroit, there were always convenience stores. There were no shortages of convenience stores and gas stations. There was, however, fewer supermarkets, and when you have limited transportation, it's difficult to get to those supermarkets. So then what you resort to is walking to the local store, which in turn you're going to be paying price per unit, much higher prices than you otherwise would if you could get to a grocery store in an area where the prices are fair. I often warn people, no matter what area you live in, convenience stores and gas stations, it is convenient to run in and buy a soda or whatever it is you decide to drink, water or juice or any other beverage, but you're going to pay usually 50 to 100% more than you would if you bought it at your local grocery store. Reason number 6 why it's too expensive to be poor is the cost of transportation. Oftentimes, when you have limited funds, you drive a vehicle that is not very reliable, which means that the vehicle is oftentimes being serviced. And those service fees for your vehicle is going to add up, oftentimes more than what a car payment would be. But the barrier to buying a new car is maybe number 1, your credit score isn't very good, so your interest rate is going to be high, or maybe your credit score is so bad that maybe you can't apply for a loan. The other thing is maybe you don't have a down payment because again, that car that doesn't work, that unreliable vehicle, is eating up all of the extra money that you would have to save towards buying a vehicle. So it seems a bit unfair, doesn't it? Life is unfair. So what happens when your car breaks down? You still have to get to work so that you can get paid. So now you have to choose a rideshare service. You Uber, or you take some other form of transportation to get to work. Ubering to work oftentimes is very expensive. So again, being poor means you pay more. Number 7, unexpected emergencies. Now, usually for those with limited funds, when you have an emergency, you don't have an emergency fund. Why? because it all leads back to the point that you don't earn enough money, or for some reason you don't have enough money. So here you are, you have an emergency, and say for instance, your car breaks down and maybe you don't have the money to pay an Uber. You don't have a credit card. Not that you should be using credit cards anyway, because the interest rate on that credit card is probably going to be somewhere between 17 and 24%. So whatever purchases you put on that credit card, even if it is for an Uber to get to work, if you don't pay it off at the end of the month, not only are you paying that high Uber fee, but now you're paying up to 24% more for that Uber fee. So again, some things can feel a bit like crushing, and it can get to the point where you feel like life just won't give you a break, and it's tremendously unfair. And I think at one time or another, many of us have experienced that. I myself has experienced that as well. I remember a time when it seemed like just when you have nothing, everything in the world happens financially. All the expenses from, just your traditional expenses to additional expenses that you didn't anticipate just come out of the blue. And everything is coming at you all at once. But there is a way out. There truly is. Hold on. Let's keep going. Let's get to the next reason why you don't want to be poor. Reason number 8, eviction. A lot of times I've seen close friends and family members get evicted for non-payment of rent. So they're caught in this downward spiral. And what happens when they can't pay the rent, all of their items get tossed out on the streets. And those items can either get damaged, they can get lost, they can get stolen. And so now here it is, you didn't have enough money to pay rent, and you hardly have any money in your pocket for food. And now all of your belongings, your clothes, your shoes, your furniture is now set out on the curb for anyone to steal and for the elements to destroy. So that's a setback in itself, because now you don't have a place to live, and now all your belongings are gone. And so for some people, they end up in a shelter temporarily, and then when they come out of that shelter, it's like starting all over again. And my heart really aches. I personally have never been homeless, but I know some people who have. The children suffer the most. So moving on to number 9. People with fewer means oftentimes cannot afford car insurance, health insurance. And, we do have Obamacare for those, who qualify for subsidies. So that is definitely a benefit. But there are still some people out there, even with those subsidies, they still cannot afford health insurance. So what happens when you have to go to the doctor? They end up going to an emergency room because they can't afford to see the regular doctor, because a doctor won't see you unless you have health care. So they end up racking up all of these healthcare bills, and then what does that do? It ruins their credit once again. So again, it's just a cycle. It's just a downward cycle. And some people feel that they can't get out of it, but there is always an answer. There is always a way to be rescued. We'll get to that later. In the event you get into a car accident and God forbid your car does not have adequate insurance, a couple things can happen. If the damage is bad enough, you lose your vehicle entirely. Number 2, if your vehicle is damaged slightly, you have to drive around with a vehicle that has damage. And I've seen vehicles like that where maybe the window has plastic taped up to it, or a bumper is taped to the car just to keep that bumper on the vehicle. So without insurance, you can either lose your vehicle or the damages will not be covered. Also, in other cases, if you cause an accident and you hurt someone, you can get personally sued. And if you don't have insurance, yes, you can get personally sued. So it just adds to your problems. And economists have a word to describe the situation or condition that people of lower income suffer. And they suffer these consequences because they are low income, because they don't have money. And they call this the poverty premium. So in other words, because you have less money, because you live in poverty, you are going to pay more. How many of you right now listening to me are tired of paying the poverty premium? I know that as a child, I saw this and I knew that it wasn't a lifestyle that was going to be for me as an adult. And I knew that I never wanted my children to live in poverty. So for those of you who are tired of the situation and the downward spiral that you find yourself in right now, the best thing that you can do for yourself is put yourself in a position where you obtain an education. Education is one of the things that you need in order to improve yourself and your circumstances. Now, there are some of us who are supremely talented and we have a voice to sing. I wish I had a nice voice to sing, but unfortunately I don't. Some of us have athletic talents, and those talents can catapult us to a position where we can use those abilities that we have to earn money. But for the rest of us, the average population, we have to find a different way to earn money. Some of us, we just have a natural knack for business. Others of us, we have the ability to learn and retain information. And so essentially what you have to do is put yourself in a position where you learn or you have the ability or some skill that can help the masses. You need to be able to help other people in some way in order to help yourself. So if you're sitting listening to this message right now, oftentimes you can't get around it. You have to go back to school. You have to either learn a trade or you have to go to college. And some of you who may be saying, well, I really can't afford to attend college. I really can't afford to go to a trade school. You can't afford not to. You have to find a way. And I know some of you have heard this phrase, if there's a will, there is a way. So let's figure it out. Even if it takes you twice as long as it should take you in order to finish your degree or to finish that school program. And right now, if you're in a position where you have children and you don't have anyone to watch your children, at some point you're going to figure it out. You're going to make the right opportunities become available to you so that you can get out of the situation that you're in. Because living in poverty is painful. It's painful emotionally and it's painful financially. So it's up to you to make the decision today to make a change in your life, just like I decided to make a change in my life. Not just for my future, but for my children's future. You owe it to yourself and you owe it to your future generation. Thank you for watching Financial Fix with Sharnella. Please like and subscribe to my channel to hear more. And if there's any topic that you'd like to discuss that I haven't talked about, please make a note of it in the comments. Again, thank you for watching Financial Fix with Sharnella, and I'll see you on the next episode.